I do appreciate your gift, though. I don't know if you can see this.
I see it.
It was happened to be in one of your bags, and the shout out to this is Matt Cutshall's, right? This is
Yeah,
his
Matt's
thing.
gonna be mad that Matt's gonna be pissed that I don't have that. You
Oh no,
have it
you're
instead of
just
me, but
lending it to me. Sorry, I didn't mean that. I mean, thank you. You
Matt,
left this here. I'm just wearing
yep.
it right now. I'll give it back to you.
Matt, this is an official apology, dude. I threw everything I owned into boxes and onto Rob, you were there. You saw me do it.
Yeah.
Onto a Penske truck in a matter of like 72 hours, and I need a new sweatshirt.
Yeah.
I'll hit you up. I'll hit you up on the gram, Matt.
Yeah. So how you? So let's start. Ryan Keith, thank you very much for doing my podcast.
Hey, bud. Well, I'm a podcaster now, so it's like this is just second. It's like breathing now.
Well, first, I've got a couple of things. First things, are you telling people where you are these days, or are you letting?
It's not a big deal. Yeah, it is what it is.
I mean, I just didn't know if you're sharing. If you're.
Yeah. I mean, honesty is a good quality, right? So yeah, I came out. I've been in Nashville for 5 years. Last year was 5 years, and had planned on. I had a house in Franklin, Tennessee, which is like 30 minutes south of Nashville, and I had planned on selling that place and heading back up to Nashville more proper, kind of like up to the more metropolitan area of Nashville. And for a couple of years now, I've been working with Ryan Mendez, the lead guitar player from Yellowcard, and I've continued to work together on music stuff. Like we're trying a bunch of different things, and enjoying them all, but not really seeing any kind of concrete, results from any of them yet. And in the grand scheme of things, the band broke up in 2017. It's been 3 years. I don't think we should expect to like have some rip roaring career in some brand new thing yet, so we're trying a bunch of different stuff, but he's in Los Angeles. My sister, is there with her 2 kids. So circumstances just sort of changed, and I took a stab at coming back out to LA to work for a while. Didn't know how permanent it was going to be or not, but got a place, moved in, and then this whole pandemic thing kicked off, and I'm in the same boat as so many other people, so I'm not like complaining or making my problems worse or bigger than anybody else's, but a lot of us in so many industries, the music industry included, have had to kind of reassess what we're doing and what the future looks like right now for the foreseeable future. I mean, how many of my friends, I can't even tell you, in touring bands they don't have a clue. They have no idea what they're going to do. And these are people who make a living as a touring artist. They're not like, it's not a hobby. This is like a full-time job for people that they do well, touring and playing music and making records. And it's all has grinded to a halt. And there's so many tours I know this year that have been postponed and not rescheduled yet. And I don't think I need to like name anyone specifically, but obviously I know a lot of people in the music business. I was in a band for 20 years. So everyone is struggling. So not to make my struggle any bigger or worse or anything, but I just, I had to get out of LA again, because I felt like I just needed to sort of make a preemptive strike and make sure I was safe, taken care of professionally, financially, for lack of a better way to put it. Things are fine and I'm still working and everything's good, but I just felt like staying out there was a tall order without having any real commitments professionally for the rest of the year, as so many of us do not have anymore. So I am back in my hometown, strangely and oddly enough, where I grew up. I moved back to Jacksonville, Florida, a couple weeks ago now, and no idea what what to think when this all went down. I just knew it was kind of the smartest adult decision to do under the circumstances, what's going on with work and the state of the economy and everything, and the music business and everything else. So I knew it was a right decision, but it was obviously a pill to swallow. I really wanted to go back to Nashville. Hadn't actually counted out that I was going to go back to Nashville at some point anyways, once Ryan and I really got up and running with whatever thing we kind of felt like was the most fruitful, or we're getting the most returns on our work. I would have loved to go back to Nashville anyways, but even that, I have a situation here in Florida that just with my family's here. I just have a situation that really is nice and safe for me. So I can come here, get my studio set up. If any of you guys are listening to this know about, the last few years of my life, I've had a really badass home recording setup. I had a really successful Kickstarter campaign after the band, right before the band ended, to help me build a studio. And so I've been able to do all my work out of there, and it's been incredible for the last few years, producing records and just trying all kinds of different stuff. A lot of the stuff, Ryan and I are exploring, we do in that room. So I'm in a safe place where I can set back up and just go right back to work, and I'm not overwhelmed. Like I'm a little anxiety ridden with like returning to my hometown for the first time in literally 20 years. But I'm not as anxiety ridden with work and the future as I was when also the kind of cost of living in Los Angeles and stuff was sort of like just weighing down on me as this got worse and worse. So, I'm just kind of taking it a day at a time and moving. As you all know, moving sucks. Nobody enjoys moving. So I'm just kind of like doing it a room at a time. And then the last thing I'm going to get to is getting in there and get the studio up and running. And so I'm almost there. I'm almost at a place where like the rest of the house is livable, so I can get in and start putting the studio together. And then, I don't know if I've been talking too long here, but it's Ryan and I are going to try to get back to work remotely. We've been doing a lot of research on like Avid Pro Tools cloud services and different ways that we can maintain our workflow over FaceTime or Zoom or something like this, where we can still be in the studio together, but we can kind of be working off the same desktop. And there's a few different ways. We're going to try a few different. We've been watching some tutorials and videos and things of like people who do it different ways. So we're kind of going to try a few and see which one works best for us. But that was a long story, not short. I am back in Florida to answer your question. That's all I was trying to do.
I want to go back. I want to keep going with the Pro Tools thing because I've been talking to a couple of people about it. So if it's kind of like a desktop share, right? Like, so we're both working on the same session. Does that mean that I can say, hey, Ryan, will you plug in wherever you are and put a session up there? Or you're just basically...
No. So the way I understand that it works, there's varying degrees of this. I mean, you can make a record, you can record produce an album offsite now, because there's, you can get audio over LAN now, over Ethernet cable, basically. That's not what we're doing. So we're not going to be like physically, recording analog signal in a studio and sending it through. So in that way, if you both have, I'm pretty sure someone can correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know, I don't have it, but I'm pretty sure it's a whole different set of gear you have to have that basically interfaces the two things. And if someone else has the same gear, the same sort of Ethernet interface, it allows you to work. The way I learned about that was I was looking at, when I lived in Nashville, I was looking at taking my studio out of the house and putting it in a place, and they were going to be running, if you rented 2 rooms, all the audio was going to be running over Cat5 from the live room to the mixing room. And so you can basically do that over Wi-Fi though. So if you both have these Wi-Fi or these Ethernet interfaces, you can be tracking and producing from far. But we're not going that far because it's a lot of gear. It's a pretty hefty investment, I think. So the cloud service through Pro Tools, which may go as far as to work with some of that Ethernet stuff, but again, I'm not an expert on that, how that all works. The thing we're looking at doing, it's basically like a bunch of people can be working on the same session, but you have to update the session, right? So the way Ryan and I work in the studio is we just have a very intuitive sixth sense kind of thing, where when someone needs to stop driving, as we call it, so if you're at the computer and you're actually operating the session, you're driving. If someone needs to tap out, you just know. It's not even like, it almost goes unspoken. It's just sort of like the person appears behind you and it's time to get out of the chair, and you take your shift is off. So the way we understand it at its most base level is we could be working and one person is driving, makes some changes, updates this. If you have fast Wi-Fi, updates the session right away, and you both have it open and you just refresh. It's sort of a refresh thing. So if I, tweaked a part in a track, I would immediately I would update the session, and Ryan would be able to refresh it right there and hear what I did. Now that still to me sounds a little laborious, and I'm not sure. But there are some workarounds, and there are different methods people are using to do it. So we are still in the process of investigating which one is going to work best for us. But at the base level, it's really like you update on your end, the other person refreshes, then they can work on it, update and refresh.
So you can do music from your playing and then put it on the session still.
Yes, exactly. So when it really makes sense if you look at it being called a cloud service, because it's not necessarily like a real-time interface. It is like you're storing your sessions in the cloud. So anyone who has access to that session can, you don't have to do it like a WeTransfer file or a Dropbox session. Like if I sent you a whole Pro Tools session, you'd have to wait and download the whole thing and unzip it. This is like, it's all up in the Avid Pro Tools cloud. So you just open the session from there, and it will have the latest update from, you can have X amount of people involved in the session. So whoever has made changes since the last time you looked at it, they will all be there when you open it. But working in real time, what a lot of people, there is a way to kind of like refresh and upload just back and forth very, very quickly. You just have to have bitchin' Wi-Fi, I think is the catch there.
So that's basically your next step is to continue to keep working with him, even though that you guys are, a million miles away.
Yeah, we're going to try. We're going to do our best. We've been working for the first part of this year. We fell into kind of a random thing, but we really started just falling in love with doing it and the learning process of how to do it. Making a trailer cue album. Basically, we learned all about how this works. That movie trailers are scored the opposite way that films are. That they're put to, the video is put to the audio and not the other way around. And so we learned the structure of a trailer track, and we learned that there are artists, you can give it whatever name you want, but artists, writer, composers that you put out a whole record of these trailer cues the same way you would put out a rock record of 10 songs. You've got 10 different, big, massive trailer cues. There's lots of different, genres and niches you can go into, but we're kind of we're working in this sort of like neoclassical electronic space. So it's like really over the top, just the most absurd 3 minutes of music you can imagine. And it's so fun. It's like video gaming, but making music, it's just, we've had a blast. The sounds are just so interesting and absurd and over the top, and there's no rules that they can't be. Like when you're making a record, a lot of times less is more, but we keep in the studio, our phrase for this, our slogan is more is more. Because it's like, You can't quite ever have enough to make it sound gnarly enough, So we've had a lot of fun making them, but we spent 3 months or so just kind of learning the ropes. And then I think we did 3 tracks. And I think the third one, we finally kind of like hit the nail on the head as far as structure and theme and the integration of those classical elements, the strings and the brass and that kind of cinematic scoring with this kind of nasty electronic, we call it Optimus Prime raping the Predator inside the Matrix sounds. We kind of mastered the melding of those two things. It took a lot of referencing. We listened to a lot of other artists and tracks and watched a shitload of movie trailers, but we're having a blast with it. So we have that in the can, like trying to work on finishing an album. Obviously, we're only kind of a song and a half, 2 songs in, so we got a ways to go. And then he and I have also been working on an actual kind of electronic album. I don't even know it's really hard when you explain this to people, because you say EDM and it's very loaded and people are like, what? Like, they think, I don't know, they think like Vegas nightclub party, whatever, but there's so many different avenues of electronic music. So without getting too deep into our influences and all that stuff, it's just, we're working on a kind of ambient electronic record. It does have a kind of dance feel to it, but it's very subdued. It's very restrained and chill. So we've been working on that for like basically since Yellowcard ended in 2017. And we have a couple of tracks done, and then several more ideas that are ready to be completed. And then this trailer thing kind of jumped in front. So at some point we really want to finish that record too. And I have no idea if either idea is going to pan out into something, but I'm kind of just searching for like a, be at home working in the studio 9 to 5, really. That's actually the dream right now. I would love to just be scoring or composing, or if this electronic music starts to work out where we can just keep producing tracks and it's getting placed, placed in any kind of way, commercials or TV or film, that stuff is very friendly towards those types of mediums. So if we could just get one of these things to become sort of regular and start generating some income, that's the dream, is to just be at home tracking, recording every day, get off the road.
I want to reverse back a little bit because I actually have a couple questions. The first question is a random question. I know we've been friends for a long time, over 10 years, I think.
We're at a decade right now.
We're at 10 years.
Yeah.
And I've always known you as Ryan Key. Now you quit Yellowcard and you go on to your own solo album, and then all of a sudden you technically change your name. Why? Mm-hmm. What was the thinking behind changing it to WRK?
So my full name is William Ryan Key, and my first name is William, which I carry from my grandfather on my mother's side. I never met my paternal grandfather. He died when I was 2 or 3 weeks old. So wasn't an influence on my life, but my maternal grandfather was a huge influence on my life. And as I got older, it was curious to me why my parents decided to call me by my middle name instead of my first name. And I still don't know why. I think maybe it was a thing. It was like popular to do in the late 70s, early 80s. It was just like parents were doing that. I'm not really sure, but so it was like part of it was like a pride thing, like proud to carry my grandfather's name and be able to use it for the first time in my life. But also to really just differentiate what I was doing from Yellowcard. I mean, if anyone has, as it stands right now, I haven't really made any announcements about this either. I've been pretty quiet, like publicly lately, but I right now I don't have any plans to really carry on with that solo thing. I think people are, if I'm saying this now and you're hearing this, it's going to bum people out. But let me say that does not mean that I am not going to record. I'm not going to record music that are my vocals and my words at some point. I just am not going to continue to fully pursue like a touring, full-time 365 releasing albums and touring career with that particular project. It was such an incredible time for me post Yellowcard to get out and do that on my own. The touring was super grueling, and I'll be the first to say I'm just a spoiled brat who was in a tour bus for 15 years, and then you throw me back in a van with 3 dudes in the middle of a blizzard in Toronto, and we're humping gear on the sidewalk, and it was insane for me to go to do that, and but we did it, and it was 3 of my closest friends in the world on the road with me, and it was that part of the experience was mind blowing. I mean, it really took me back to those early days in the van of why you start playing music with your friends, and that all changes pretty dramatically over decades of time. But this was a really good experience. It's just that I really, really want to work in the studio. I really want to be composing and scoring, and it's a long road, and I have a lot of work to do to get there. So it's hard for me to get my head around having to be out on the road that much. And if I'm trying to pursue like a full on, I'm going to start playing bigger shows and getting on festivals and really building this solo career thing. It's not really the direction I ended up wanting to head in. So that said, though, I've already, since we've all been kind of locked down, I've been thinking how cool it would be to just kind of fire up the rig and track a couple of just acoustic songs, I'm sure I could pull some pretty gnarly shit out right now. So it's not off the table that I would record or release some kind of EP with, back to your question, the William Ryan Key name, because that really, if you've listened to it, the stuff I released, then that it's not even in the same like solar system or galaxy even as Yellowcard's music. And it's something I wanted to do for a really long time, was write and record what started the first EP as very stripped down kind of singer-songwriter ambient pieces of music, and evolved more on the second EP into where if I was going to keep going with it, I would want to keep going more in that direction, which was sort of putting together my like singer-songwriter and sort of like Americana alt country or whatever you want to call it influences with my post-rock influences bands like Explosions in the Sky and Mogwai and Caspian and those types of ripping instrumental bands. And I think that comes from my love of scoring and composing and stuff, just like these big sweeping massive songs like that have this kind of movements to them. So on the second EP, I kind of tried to blend those two ideas, and dude, it was great. I loved making those records. They're the most, some of the most personal music I've ever released in my life. And it was a good run for a couple of years, but now I just am really concerned with figuring out how to be home and working in the studio full time.
Random question. Did anyone call you William? Like people that weren't Yellowcard
on the road and stuff while I was touring? Yeah, it was funny because, you think about how many fans were coming to shows and stuff that I was just the guy from Yellowcard. They didn't, I mean, when people ask if you get recognized in out in public or whatever, which doesn't happen very often anymore, but if it does, it's never like, are you Ryan? I mean, every once in a while it is, but it's mostly, are you the guy from Yellowcard?
Yeah.
So when I think people found me on my own through Yellowcard, but they saw my name kind of register for them for the first time. So yes, there were multiple people at shows would be like, William, and I didn't even respond, because it was definitely I mean, I guess if we're talking about it now, it probably seems really pretentious that I did it, but it was really just, I mean, it's my name, it's my fucking name. But I was really just trying to step out of the kind of the shadow of Yellowcard and make it something new.
Well, we're going to get to your podcast in a second, but as a fan of your podcast and listening to it, and I haven't got caught up, but there was an episode that you talked about Cloverfield.
Mm-hmm.
So did you ever talk about that on your podcast? Because I would really like to know the story behind Cloverfield.
Man, it's a crazy story, and I don't know. I'm trying to make it as concise as I can. If I've never told you this story before?
No.
Really?
That was the first.
Right.
I've known you for 10 years, and this is the first I've ever heard of it on your own podcast.
All right. So I was growing up my whole life. I was a theater kid. I started doing theater and dance and just stage performing stuff when I was very young, 5-6 years old. I was in it. In high school, I got to attend a magnet school here in Jacksonville for the performing arts, which was, I got to really focus hard on theater and acting. And I was all over the country auditioning for Bachelor of Fine Arts programs for theater, for college, and got into a few, but ended up being that the one that just made the most sense financially for my family and everything else was for me to go in state here in Florida to Florida State University, which has one of the best BFA theater programs in the country. But I was 19 and I was pissed and I was a brat, and it's not where I wanted to go. So I dropped out a couple of times. But that was the last time I did any theater. It was like back in 99, 2000 was the last time I did any. So fast forward 2007, the band had done really well, and, just met people here and there through living in Hollywood and LA. So I have a friend named Patton Valentine. That's actually his name, Patton Valentine. He's from Mississippi, which also explains why his name's Patton Valentine. But he's the best. Just been a good friend of mine for many years now. And he was the dude on Brian Burke's desk at Bad Robot. So he was right outside Brian's door, just chilling with him and JJ every day for several years. That was his kind of one of his post internship, pre-real career jobs, was working Burke's desk at Bad Robot. So we're out having a drink one night, and he was just like, hey, I've gotten to be really good friends with one of their casting directors that they use all the time. And JJ's making a movie, and none of us know anything about it, but he's making a movie. And I think I'm at a point where I'll be able to put in a word basically and get you an audition if you want to do it. And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. I'll do it. So casting director's name was Alyssa Weisberg. And so I met her for the first time first time I ever been on a movie lot. I, had an appointment, drove onto the Paramount lot. I was pretty fucking psyched. This is 2007 again. So I drive into the lot and I meet Alyssa. She's just the kindest person. She makes it so easy, and she's so welcoming and chill and just no stress, no pressure. And this was just a hang. This was a pre-audition hang. So it was grab coffee and chat and talk about my experience in theater and whatever. So we just had some coffee, and she was like, all right, cool, I'll be in touch. And I'm thinking oh, cool. There goes that with the classic Hollywood line, we'll be in touch,
Are you Ryan from Yellowcard at this point, or this is way before this?
This is 2007. So
Oh,
we're in the thick of it. Yeah,
okay.
for sure. So I do get a call, and they're like, we want to, we want to see you for this thing. So I go, and Cloverfield was the working title for the film. So it was actually on the sides and stuff, and it ended up being the title of the film. But at the time it was the working title. And I don't know where that came from, but I go and I read, and then I get a call back, and I go and I read again. And I think it was 3 before the last one. So I get another one, and I'm kind of tripping at this point. Like, this is crazy. And so I go and I do the third one, and then it was either 2 or 3. And then after that last one, get a call that says, hey, we're going to see you and one other person for the role. And these auditions are going to happen not in a Paramount, but at the Bad Robot offices. So I go to Bad Robot, I walk in, check in, get my little badge, sit down in the lobby. And I didn't know this at the time, but I didn't know who he was at the time, but I'm sitting across the lobby from TJ Miller from Silicon Valley. So it's just me and him. That's it for the 2 dudes in the lobby. And don't remember who went first, but either way, they come out and call my name. And I walk in a room, and it's like this. Every other every other screen test I did was just me and Alyssa in a room alone. So anytime she'd be like, she gave me some great tips or notes, coaching me through it, and I'd get to record as many as I wanted, and till she was like, nailed it, great. And so I walk in, she's there, but so is like 10 other people. So like all the writers, producers, everyone, and fucking J.J. Abrams is just sitting there with his glasses, like undeniably J.J. Abrams right in the middle. And I fucking blew it. I know I blew it. I was so I did not do well with my nerves. I don't think. I mean, I'll never know, but I walk in there and I'm just like, oh my God, dude, this is real. Like, this is not just Patton's little phone call from a few weeks ago. Like, this is happening. And J.J. Abrams is right fucking there. So I did the read. I remember asking if I could do it again. And they were like, yeah, sure, of course. J.J. Abrams was like, yeah, sure, of course, man, no worries. Thank you, JJ. So I go and I do it again, and they're like, thanks, man, that was great. We'll be in touch. The old Hollywood line. So I left, and I ended up getting a call, a couple days later, and through the agency and all that stuff, whatever it was at the time, and they actually said, so they ended up going with TJ Miller, which this was a huge step in his career. Obviously, this feature film was one of his first things I think that he did after stand up. And they basically said, look, we wanted to either go with kind of like an East Village, New York City kind of hipster vibe, or a kind of off the wall, goofy comic relief vibe. And, had we gone with the Brooklyn thing, you would have gotten the role. So, take comfort in that. We needed the comic relief because that's the only thing in the movie that is it. So, so they cast TJ, but then, I mean, the story keeps kind of getting cooler. So I'm out on tour. I don't remember exactly what tour or where, but I think it was Vans Warped Tour, that summer of 2007. So Transformers was coming out. The first Transformers movie came out summer of 2007. And Bad Robot got a trailer spot for Cloverfield before Transformers, but they hadn't shot the movie or anything. So they didn't have a trailer. So Alyssa called me. She was like, hey, I have this cool thing. Can you get back to LA? We're going to shoot an emergency trailer for the film. And I was like, sure. So I go, and this is how I still get I get like 4 cents twice a year for this film still. Back then though, it was, when I get to the end of the story, it was pretty crazy. The amount of money I got through Universal Pictures without being in the picture was pretty wild. So I go to this audition, or this shoot for the trailer. It's at a loft downtown LA. There's a bunch of extras around. And so Alyssa rounds a bunch of us up. And like in this group, it's me, it's a bunch of other, actors who had auditioned probably for the film. Charlene Yee, if I'm saying that wrong, I apologize, but from Knocked Up and a bunch of other stuff. She's an actor that's been, Asian American actor that's been an amazing stuff. She's there as the same role that I'm kind of going to be like put in. And she's like, so what we're going to do is the premise for this trailer is the lead character, I forget what his name is, but the lead character is leaving for Japan, and we're all having a party, and everybody's like wishing him well to send him off. So we're going to come around with cameras and have you guys do some improv, like amidst the party, do some improv, like handheld, handy cam, like, see it, Rob, that was his name, actually. See you later, Rob, have fun in Japan kind of shit. So we're hanging out forever. I remember thinking after I left this thing that I was too chicken shit to ask for her number, but I spent almost the entire night sitting at like a bar where if you watch this trailer, that's where you see me in the trailer, is behind the bar. Um, and I was just talking to Lizzie Kaplan the whole night because that was one of her first gigs too, and she was sitting at the bar, so I was just standing behind it. It was like a little standing tiki bar thing. So, anyways, we're getting everything finally gets going, and they start shooting the party and all the stuff. They shoot the principal stuff, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna do some of this improv stuff. And there's only like 7 or 8 of us that are gonna do the improv stuff. And sure enough, I'm not like bragging, or this is a humble brag. Like J.J. Abrams is the one shooting the improv. So each of us have to do like an individual improv session with J.J. Abrams holding a Sony Handycam. So I will always take to the grave the fact that I was directed by J.J. Abrams at one point in my professional life. So we all just had to do a little clip or whatever. And he was like, oh, that was great, man. And thanks for coming. Nice to meet you. Shook J.J. Abrams' hand. It was cool. Super huge night. So that's all done. We leave. Alyssa calls me. I go back to tour. I flew in to do the thing, and I flew right back out to the tour. I'm on the tour. She calls again and goes, hey, I have something else that might be really cool for you and actually be in the film. And I was like, yes, what? And she's like, well, I haven't seen the trailer yet, but if your footage that JJ shot was not used, and if we can't see your face in the trailer, then I'll be able to fly to New York. When we're actually shooting, you can like dress up in full Marine, military garb and be like one of the dudes, one of the military guys, like giving orders or doing something. So you have a couple lines and like you're blasting the monster in the streets basically. And I was like, fuck yes. Like, let's go when, and she's like, well, we have to see the trailer first. And sure enough, like I thought I was being smart in the trailer where I went and stood like where the most light was, like, ooh, this is where I need to be. Cause when the camera goes by, you're going to see me in it. And like, yeah, there's just, there I am in the trailer, just like boom. So I didn't get to go do the military part, which was a bummer. But anyways, at the end of Cloverfield, it says party goer number 8, Ryan Key. So for like 3 years, I got super solid royalty checks because my name was listed in the credits. That's it. That's all. Just my name being listed. And it makes you actually put in perspective how well some of these people do. Because apparently if you have like one line, it goes up from what I was getting to a whole new level. And, I didn't know any of that, but either way, I still get, like I said, I get like 8 cents a year now. So it's pretty cool.
Hey man, 8 cents. 8 cents is 8 cents. You can't say no to money.
That's the ballad of Cloverfield.
Yeah. Right. So let's talk about the podcast.
Yeah.
And the reasons. I mean, it's kind of tough for us because we talk a lot and we just spent 2 weeks, the whole day together. But I kind of want to know, I kind of know why you did it in the first place, but share with me why.
Yeah, this actually might be strangely the most promising thing on the horizon for me, professionally. It's it's really catching on, and it's still got a long way to go, but the groundswell is pretty cool. And if one positive thing to take out of quarantine, or self-isolation or whatever that we're all trying to do right now, is that podcasting is a cool thing to do, and people need stuff to listen to pass the time, and we're doing long format podcasting. So, so I'm co-host with 2 other people on a podcast called Think the Maker. And this was born of an idea. An old friend of mine and I, his name's Adam Russell, and he played bass in a band called Story of the Year. Still does. They still do some stuff. They're not crazy active, but they play shows and put out records every once in a while. So Adam's the bass player for Story of the Year. We didn't know each other very well back in the day when both of our band, we Ocean Avenue and Page Avenue were released within 2 months of each other in 2003. So, but we didn't know each other that well, and we probably had beef because we were like, oh, Avenue, bro, real cool, But yeah, we didn't really know each other, and crossed paths later on in life at some shows and stuff, and just got to talking, and we realized that we both have a very deep love and reverence for Star Wars, and like that we're on the same level as far as like how impactful Star Wars has been in our life, and what a big part of it continues to be in our adult life and stuff. So we got to talking after kind of reconnecting and becoming good buds over a couple of years. Adam had brought up how much he wanted to do a pod. He's been a big podcast fan. You know, he listens to a shitload of podcasts and knows what's on the front lines of the good podcasting that's going on for years now. And he wanted to do a podcast. And so he brought it forth to me to say, I want to do like a pop culture kind of like, we start with, you know, stuff like Star Wars, whether it's like board games or movies or comics or whatever. And that led us, you know, as you do when you come up with an idea like this, I was like, look, man, it sounds great. I'm crazy busy. To take on another thing on my plate right now is a lot. And he was like really understanding of that. He basically was like, well, I want to do this thing. And as far as editing and that kind of stuff, like I'm happy to bear that weight, you know, if you just want to be a part of it. And so we had a very good early on like friendship through the whole thing. Cause you know, it's sketchy to get into business with your friends. As anyone in a band for 20 years can tell you, but we had a very thing up front where I was like, dude, I'm present. I'll be there. I want to try it for sure. But I don't know if you know, how much time I'm going to have or whatever. And I don't want us to get into a bad place because you feel like you're pulling more weight than me. And we've had this really good understanding, and it's evolved into a thing where like what I was about to say is when you have an idea like this, you go around in a circle and you kind of come back right where you started a lot of times. And we realized what we should just do is make the podcast about Star Wars and not kind of cover a more broad sweeping pop culture and film and sci-fi and nerdy shit all over the place. We decided to make it a little more focused. And I have fallen in love with it. Doing it has become a real joy for me, more than I thought it was going to be. I look forward to it every week, you know, researching the material, and Adam is still pulling the heavy weight for editing and really making it what it is, what you hear at the end of the day. And he's doing an amazing fucking job, and all the credit to him for making the audio what it is, because that's really at the end of the day, what's most important is the flow of it and the editing of it. Just like a film, you know, editing is everything. But I've really just fallen in love with doing it. And we've gotten this little groundswell going. We've got some opportunities coming up that were already about to happen when the pandemic hit and they're all postponed, but like some Comic-Cons, some international Comic-Cons we're traveling to, where we're going to get to interview, hopefully some big Star Wars people. We have, I can't say because it's not confirmed, but I have an actor from a very current Star Wars situation that is a huge deal, that is a friend of a friend that's very interested in being on the show. I randomly, the first day of launching the podcast, I sat down on a plane unknowingly all the way from Los Angeles to Orlando. So a long flight. On the first Thursday of the podcast, I sat down next to a woman named Ashley Eckstein, who is the voice of Ahsoka Tano on the Clone Wars for Star Wars. Like the biggest animated character in the Star Wars universe. I just sat next to her and we just wrapped the whole flight. So she's psyched on the podcast. You know, we've been messaging on Instagram and she's super like up. She listens to every, it's been kind of wild. And so we get through the process. One of the people we had on as a guest early on was a friend I knew that was a massive Star Wars fan, actually more knowledgeable. His Star Wars IQ is higher than Adam or I think maybe put together. He's got this just bank of knowledge about very intricate things, and it brings a whole new energy to the show. And we brought him on to just kind of be a guest while we broke down Solo, the film. And Adam and I got in the car. We actually went to his house because we were in, randomly enough, we were in Orange County going to Galaxy's Edge. Adam lives in St. Louis, Missouri, and I was in LA at the time, but he had flown out for a week of Galaxy's Edge just to come out and go to Disneyland all week. And so we were on our second day and at Galaxy's Edge and had gone to our friend Nick Gambarian's house. So Nick plays bass in a band called Bayside, who I shared a label with at Hopeless Records when I was in Yellowcard. And so we went to Nick's house to record the episode. And as soon as we got in the car, Adam and I afterwards were like, dude, that was great. Right. And we both just kind of had this unspoken thing of, we felt like he should be a part of the show more somehow, you know, and that evolved into inviting Nick to be a full-time co-host. And I think as we get going, it seems like hopefully, you know, it's picking up steam. Not only does Nick bring a lot to the show, as I said, from like an IQ standpoint of just the knowledge he has of the Star Wars universe, even more like the expanded universe that goes out kind of into the next layer of nerd, you know, that I hope to get to now that I'm doing the podcast. But we also have kind of like alternates, you know, if someone can't be there for an episode, we're in a better position to keep the show rolling full time, because that's been really important to us too, is to make sure we have an episode every week. And, you know, it's tough with everything else going on in your life to put all that together, which is why Adam gets so much credit, because he's not only showing up to record, 3-hour long format podcast. He's spending a week editing it every time before it comes out. And so, it's just been a huge learning experience. And I think people are really enjoying it. I think we found, without planning this, we found that kind of the mission of our podcast and what people are getting out of it. And we didn't realize this is what we were trying to do, but now it's something we are trying to do, because I think people are getting a lot out of this, is that we're just trying to find a way, because there's so much, obviously not just with Star Wars, there's so much negativity in the critique world, like everyone's opinion about everything is so shitty now. And Star Wars has been such a point of joy for us in our life, our whole life. We, like we're halfway through whatever, like we're at the 50-yard line of life, as they say. And Star Wars has been such a massive source of happiness for us for so long. Like we want to emulate that, even if there's something we don't like right now we're getting through the prequels and we're having a tough time because it's really hard to spin those in a positive way, because they're not good films.
Right.
But it's been cool because it's provided us this challenge to keep it positive. And as someone who can very often be more glass half empty than glass half full myself, this has been a really cool exercise in positivity for me. I think it extends beyond the podcast and Star Wars for me. It's just every week I'm focused on this positive thing, and I'm focused on building something with my friends again. And we'll see where it goes, man. But it would be really funny if all this, with all the music I'm trying to work on and put out, if the thing that ends up panning out is a Star Wars podcast I started with my bud,
Right.
I mean, there's a million of them out there. So it is as Han Solo himself said, delusions of grandeur possibly, but you never know. And we had 1,000 followers a week and a half ago. We have 2,200 now. So people that are finding it are liking it, and they're spreading the word. I mean, that's a lot of interaction in a week's time. We had almost 10,000 profile visits this past week. Which is
what
crazy.
Services are you streaming on?
So the podcast is called Thank the Maker. And I think the two best ways to engage, if you just want to listen, it's just anchor.fm/thanktthemaker. That gives you like all your podcast outlets wherever you listen, but it's on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everywhere else. But if you don't know I don't know how to tell everyone where everything is other than to say, go to anchor/thanktthemaker. But also the Instagram page, that's where we're really, doing the most fun stuff, like posting stuff and stories and everything. We were really one of the things that hurts the most for the podcast with the whole, like stay at home orders at this moment, was we were just starting to get into the coolest stuff with posting stories and being at Galaxy's Edge, and people were really reacting well to that. So as soon as this is over, we all have a big Galaxy's Edge trip planned together. None of us have been to the one in Florida, so I'm only 2 hours away now. So we're going to hit that for a few days and just story and review it, and probably do an episode on that too. So I don't know, man. We'll see. But like I said, they've rescheduled it. So later this year, we're slated to go to Wales Comic-Con, which is actually a pretty huge con in the UK, out in the country in Wales. So we're going to go to that, and the guy that runs that, he's obviously got it. He's up to his neck in it right now, trying to reschedule it and make sure guests can still appear and all this stuff, because he's had to cancel it and rebook it basically. But when it was on, before all this mess occurred, he was really into the idea of helping us get involved in more cons and stuff. He reps con people, artists that go to cons. He reps them all over the world. So he's stoked on that. So I'm hoping that's another outlet for us to where we can start traveling and going to different cons and doing cool interviews and stuff. So we're about to start ramping up some merch, and we have some really cool ideas for t-shirts and stuff like that, and coffee and stuff. So Nick is a coffee roaster, so we're gonna do our own Thank the Maker coffee and stuff. We have some cool ideas, and we'll see where it goes, but I'm excited about it. So yeah, if you're into Star Wars especially, but if you want to get into Star Wars, that's another thing, is we go pretty deep, but not deep enough to where it wouldn't be something that a casual Star Wars fan, someone who would say like, well, yeah, I really like the movies, but I've never read a novel, or I've never watched the animated series, that kind of thing. Maybe you didn't even watch Rogue One or Solo. You've just seen kind of the main Star Wars movie. But I think that our podcast is a really cool way for someone like that to listen and still understand what we're talking about. We're not trying to go over your head. If anything, we're just trying to get people excited to get more into their love of Star Wars. And if it's someone who loves it enough to where like they've watched all 9 Skywalker films, you would probably be stoked on some of the stuff we're talking about and suggesting. So yeah.
I want to do a callback to something that you said earlier about how you don't want to be on the road anymore. You just want to be home. And then you just said you're going to see if you can start doing cons everywhere around the world. So
yeah, but that's well, okay. I think that if we got to fly somewhere and sleep in a hotel room, and go to a convention center and then back to the hotel room, and that's different than all the respect, man, to the bands that have carried on and did it the way we did it. But man, we were lucky. Our van and trailer days were much shorter than they should have been. We really, really got extremely lucky to move up the way we did as quickly as we did, and getting to go back out and tour in a van again was. And by the way, this is me touring in a van in 2019. It's it's like a Mercedes Sprinter that you rent from. I mean, most bands tour in those now, but compared to 2000 when we were like, we were in our beat up ass Econoline van. And that said, a lot of bands are still in those too. And I just, it gave me a renewed respect for touring, just road dogs like we used to be. You're just out there grinding it out every day to stay on the road. And while I commend it and respect it, I just think that that time has passed for me. So
well, also too, the road dogging now, to go back, you're talking about, used to be humping guitars and heads and whatever else you were doing there. Now, if you do the Comic-Cons, you're basically one Pelican roll case with all headshots.
Yeah. Yeah. We just need our audio gear, a few t-shirts and our Jedi robes, we're good.
Right. Trying to think of what else. I think that's it. I just wanted to kind of catch up on those couple of things. And just I hadn't talked to you in like a week or two, so I just wanted to see.
Yeah, like I said, I've been pretty quiet lately, so it'd be cool to put this out so people can kind of hear what's going on. So I appreciate you having me.
No, I appreciate you doing it for me. But
No worries,
and
bud.
obviously it's cool, calm, connected because I'm connected. But you've known me for, like you said, 10 years. So if you ever need anything, I'm always around. You can always call me.
Yeah, brother. Well, I'm gonna need a couch in LA from now on. So
Yeah, well, I've got plenty of them, so we're good to go.
All right, we'll get one out of storage.
Yeah, right. All right, man.
bud.
Stay safe and stay healthy. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bud.
Bye.
Peace.